you can't breed an entrepreneur. There is truly some psychological makeup, some risk-taking ability, salesmanship, creativity that all have to be mixed in this amalgamation to create what people see as an entrepreneurial success.
In a way, we both knew we were going to leave corporate America because in a way we were unmanageable. I have a limitless life. Nobody's going to hold me back because I've been through X, Y, and Z, and I can't let anybody else hold me back because of that. Our guest today is somebody who really means a lot to me, and he's a former coworker of mine, Bill Hauser. He currently stands as the CEO of the SMB team. But what I think we're going to learn from Bill is our leadership topic of the day is thinking big. And he was somebody who challenged me quite a bit in my life. And I've mentioned him in previous podcasts. Even though he was younger than me, I was not opposed to learning from him. And he's recently shared with me that I've challenged him a little bit too. So I'm really excited to bring this episode to you. And I think you're going to find that even though externally people might look at us as a president or a CEO of a company, we both have dealt with some really tough stuff in life, and we use that as motivation. So, Bill, thanks so much for joining us today, and I'm really excited to share your story with our audience.
Yeah, man. Likewise, it's surreal to be talking to you right now. Crazy how life comes full circle, man.
Yeah. So I just want to tell the audience a little bit about us and our relationship before I get into some questions. So at the time when I met Bill, I was the top sales rep in the country at a very large company called YP.com at the time. And Bill came in and, he really was like that new recruit. So, if you've been into sports, you have that athlete who thinks they're really good, and then somebody comes in and they're like, whoa, we recruited the superstar. Bill was the superstar, right? So he came in and he was like, I want to do things my own way, get out of my way. And he tried immediately and successfully, right, to become the top dog in the company. And it was so cool because I think instead of us kind of competing with each other in a negative way, we challenged each other in a positive way. Bill, tell our audience before we get started what you're up to today. So you're the CEO of the SMB team. Tell us a little bit about the SMB team.
Yeah, man. It's crazy looking back, man. When I first met you, like I was saying, I had no direction in my life. It was a really low moment. I know we're going to go into it, but you were the most open-minded person, and you were number one in the company when I joined. And to me, that taught me more than anything else, was that the reason you were number one was because you were always learning. And when I started succeeding, you actually leaned into it. We started actually collaborating more. And my definition of success was kind of warped at that moment because of how open-minded you were. And I've spoke about this before regarding you, is it taught me a different label of success. So I'm grateful to you for that, because I never had a reference point. I thought if you were successful, you'd shut out the naysayers and do your own thing. And that was actually more the mode that I was in. I was super curious and learning a lot, but I still had an ego at that time that I hadn't really chipped away at. But you didn't. And that taught me a lot. So I appreciate that. When you look at where things are now with SMB team, it's pretty crazy. So we have 102 full-time W-2 employees. That's all domestic full-time employees. We have probably 100 full-time equivalent freelancers between content writers, designers, developers. We have just around 500 clients. We have one part of our business, we have a coaching business that does around 8 figures. We have a agency that does also separately around 8 figures. We have a virtual assistant company that is right around that 8-figure mark right now. It started 2 years ago. And we have a fractional CFO business that just started recently. And really the vision of SMB team, which you were one of the first people in the world to ever hear me use the word SMB team, It was really my maniacal obsession. And what I thought when I got in the business was that small business owners, I mean, you and I both know it, we were on so many meetings with business owners who are struggling, and they think that marketing is going to be the thing that solves their problems. But really, it's lack of business education that is causing the majority of their problems. And that's why they don't have a bulletproof sales process. They don't have a scalable recruiting process. They don't have scalable systems in their business. And all of this materializes in, a business owner going, oh, I just need more leads, just need more leads. When we really probe deeply into that, like if a business hasn't grown for 10 years, to me, I believe that shows nothing more than the lid of the leader, right? The leader has stopped learning something, right? Or stopped growing and developing their business in some way. So we work backwards when it came to building SMB Team from what does it actually take to double, and our niche is law firms, what does it take to double a law firm owner's revenues, profits, and personal free time in less than 12 months? So what services would need to exist in order to do that, where I could wave a magic wand and a client signs up with us and they almost have a one-stop shop solution for everything to grow their firm up to 8 figures and beyond from wherever they're at. And that was the overall kind of hypothesis, was that we're going to be a business transformation company, not a marketing company. So I always used to get really pissed off in the early days when people would just call me a PPC company or a marketing agency. And one day I kind of got really frustrated when a client called us a marketing agency for the last time. And I was like, screw it, I'm starting a coaching business so that you can never say this again. So I held a webinar and I got 12 clients or so to sign up for this coaching program. At the time was $1,500 a month. And now that's evolved into 350 or so clients that we now have in our coaching business. So yeah, it's a really interesting business model. There's a lot of fires that I don't know how to put out in some ways because it is a new business model. So I don't really have someone to necessarily know how to solve all the problems, but that's why I keep waking up in the morning, is because it's exciting. And I hate solving perfectly solvable problems. And I think that's why it's so freaking fun. And I can't believe we get to do this.
Yeah. And dude, you've had an entrepreneurial spirit since I met you. One of the things that I think we share is that I think in a way, we both knew we were going to leave corporate America because in a way we were unmanageable. Right. So, no, I'm serious. Right. Like I was unmanageable and so
Yeah.
were you. And why I was unmanageable is I never liked somebody to waste my time. Like, I don't care if you're my manager, if you're, I don't care who you are. Like, you weren't wasting my time and you came in and you were the same way. Like, we would be like, yeah, we're not going to that meeting. Like, we're just not doing that because that's a waste of time. And then it was like, you either keep Bill Hauser and you keep Chad Lauer, or you let us go do our thing. So what do you say to that person, today? And how do you use that as like knowledge to say, okay, it's time to go be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think this is a big question that people need to answer for themselves. Like for you and I to go into business and to be successful, there are also hundreds of people who went into business and didn't have the same trajectory. And I think the market is the best personal development teacher ever. Like there is no greater teacher than the marketplace. And if you enter the marketplace with unlimited options and you're able to carve a niche in that marketplace and go sell services within that niche and retain clients within that niche and scale a business within that niche, a lot of variables have to happen all in a row in the right proportions for that to actually work. And 99% of people are not able to, for whatever reason, maybe they chose the wrong niche, maybe they didn't, anticipate all the challenges that were going to come in their first couple of years of business. Whatever it is, I think that if people listen to the marketplace and accept what the marketplace is giving you as feedback and stare that in the face and absorb it, and even if it's really tough, really swallow that and digest it and develop from that, people would be happier in their jobs. And that's just not the case right now. 80% of people are actively disengaged. That means they're choosing to be disengaged from their work every single day. That is insane to me, right? And I think that's more of a sign of people not really listening to the signs of the things they should be doing. So when you and I were hard to manage, what that really means is, in my eyes, is we did have that entrepreneurial spirit. We did have that unbundled creativity where we had to do things our own way. And that was just a sign. And the fact that we felt in a box and we had to go out and do something about it, to me, that's just a sign of the natural evolution of entrepreneurs. And people who want to become an entrepreneur just because they see someone driving a nice car who runs their own business or makes a lot of money because they're doing this, that's where you end up losing all of your money and making really big mistakes. So one thing I have a ton of empathy for our sales team is we do have a couple members on our sales team who are like that. And they're super top performers. And it's hard for me because I see myself in them to manage them, but there are certain circumstances where we do need to tame it back. But to answer your question in short, I think you can't breed an entrepreneur. I think there is truly some psychological makeup, some risk-taking ability, salesmanship, creativity that all have to be mixed in this amalgamation to create what people see as an entrepreneurial success.
Dude, that if we're going to take a nugget from this podcast, that's it right there. And that's a perfect transition for me because part of that with me is my adversity. And the Lauer Power podcast is using your adversity as motivation. And I meet so many entrepreneurs who, when you talk to them about why they got started, it's less about the product or the service, and it's more about they have some sort of crazy internal motivation because they dealt with something in their life that said, this is my therapy. And it's to go out and it's to build something and wake up every day where I have a limitless life. Nobody's going to hold me back because I've been through X, Y, and Z, and I can't let anybody else hold me back because of that. So tell us a little bit about Bill Hauser's adversity and how you've used that. Now, I know about some of it, but tell the story or the audience about how you've used that as motivation to build this crazy successful business.
Yeah. So when I met you, it was my entire life was in shambles. So I don't know if I ever told you this story, but my first day at YP where we met, I walked into the office. This was after I got back from like the training thing that they do for new hires. I got to the office, and my first day, I woke up at like 5 a.m. that morning. I was living with my dad, driving this beat up car. I forget what it even was, like a Jeep or something, really old. There was a hole in the floor, literally a rust hole in the floor. And I drove to work, and I didn't tell anyone this except for there was this old sales manager guy there. He had white hair. He was super old. He was on his way out, like right after I joined. I think his name was Joe.
Hopper. Yeah, Joe Hopper.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Joe Hopper comes in at like 7 a.m. I'm there at like 6:30. I'm role playing. I just bought a Grant Cardone sales training university course. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done sales before. So I'm role playing sales lines on my first day alone in the big conference room in that office. And Joe looks down. He comes in there at 7 after 30 minutes of me doing role play, looks down at my shirt, and there was a speck of red on my shirt. And he asked what was that? And I just kind of covered it up and said, oh, pasta or something from, blah, blah, blah. But what had really happened was that morning I was making a smoothie, and my dad choked me in the kitchen, holding my neck up against the wall and defending myself. I had to literally punch him in the face. Cops were called before I left for work. And I moved out literally that day. I took all my clothes, put them into my car, went to the office of YP. I had nowhere to live. And I ended up sleeping at my friend Mike's house, who was in Phoenixville, for that night. I have goosebumps sharing this. I've almost, I can't, I don't think I ever shared this story. And so I literally slept in my friend Mike's spare bedroom. And I literally had nothing. Coming before that, I had written a book called Worry 180. That book was on how I overcame anxiety disorder, which was something I suffered with for 10 years of my life, after my family went bankrupt. And just a whole slew of adversity all in a row, from family bankruptcy, both parents almost committing suicide, where I received the suicide note from my mom, on the table, where she was literally about to take her own life because my family was going bankrupt. And that led to anxiety disorder, to where, my whole life was in shambles. Our house got repossessed. Everything we owned in a period of time just wiped from me. And I write this book, Worry 180. No one buys it. I spent 8 months writing the book. I didn't know how to sell or market. Published the PayPal store on my mom's spare bedroom. I published it, and then I had this flood of anxiety go through me. This is after I had started seeing some results from me overcoming anxiety. And I felt this anxiety come back, but it was because I didn't know how to sell or market. So I said to myself, I'm never going to start a business ever again until I learn how to sell and market, right? And then that was where I started applying to sales jobs. So the jobs I interviewed for going up to YP was, door knocking stuff, the stuff where you try to get people to switch their internet providers, So I was interviewing for all that stuff. And then I finally got YP, interviewed with Dell, who you and I both know. And I had just read the book Think and Grow Rich, and I started reciting my major definite purpose statement to myself, which was, I will make $400,000 in 1 year. And I started saying that to myself every single day, like literally. And I was saying it to myself so much, like I was in mid conversations and I just bring it up like as space filler in conversations. And people would be like, what? Because it was literally it's all I had that was positive, was what I had learned from Think and Grow Rich. So I get in an interview with Dell, and I told him, he asked, how much money do you want to make? And I stared him in the face and did not smile. And I said, $400,000. And he actually sat back and he chuckled. Like, I don't know. I couldn't tell how he was laughing, but I know he laughed, and he sat back, he chuckled, and he said, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, I don't really care how, I'm just going to do it. And I didn't laugh at all when he laughed, and then he stopped laughing, and he was like, well, maybe this guy's serious. So I thought for sure I didn't get the job, but I kept following up, because I had no sales experience. I don't know why they would give me the job other than, this dude's crazy. Maybe he'll be right. I don't know. I had zero experience though. So they ended up giving me the job. Fast forward to that day where I had the falling out with my dad, blood on my shirt, moving in with my friend. And that was, to me, that was the start of my real identity as a person shaping. It was the first time in my entire life I felt like my real self. I started to feel a little bit of unleashed. Like, maybe there is something that I can do that I won't feel like trash every single day at the end of the day, because I hate what I'm doing. I felt like I was in a straitjacket for my entire life. And it sucked. And I felt like, as soon as I started, I made like 8 sales in my first month, and I didn't know that was a good or bad. And then I looked at the results and I was like, oh, I had made the most sales in my first month. I was like, maybe I finally found something that I actually vibe with. And at the end of that first month, I felt like, damn, I can't believe I get to do this for another month, right? And that was where my mind shifted from I have to I get to. And all of these chapters of growth, all the way up to the day when I quit YP, literally right after I was #1 in net business, I quit 2 weeks after, because success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Like, I succeeded at this external goal and I felt terrible about it, but I didn't feel terrible for the 18 months that I was there. I loved those 18 months. But when I accomplished the goal, I looked at that goal. I was about to go to the President's Club trip. I think you were going there too, right?
I remember vividly.
Yeah. And then I didn't go to the trip, like last minute. And it's because I talked to my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I was crying with her at home. I was like, babe, I feel like I found something here, but I can't fully express myself. So I called my mom and I was testing her out, and I said, Mom, I just quit. And she's bragging to her friends because she thought I went into sales. She's like, oh, my son's good now. She's bragging to him, oh, he made X amount. I made $265,000 in that first year, 265. And my mom is so happy. And then I rip it from her, and I wanted to see her response. And when she was on the phone with me, I hadn't really quit, but I wanted to see her reaction. She said, oh, fine. I know you'll figure it out. And I was just like, so then that's when I sent my resignation email right after I talked to her. And then I was so scared to make my first sale. It took me 8 months to make my first sale. I was so scared because it was my own thing. And am I going to really accept someone's credit card and bear that liability? And so I got a big bonus check at the end. And I basically rode out that bonus check until I went down to like $5,000 in my bank account. I literally ran out of money. I had nothing left. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened, because as soon as I went broke, I was able to be free to do what I knew how to do, which was sell. And then same thing happened. My first month, I sold 8 clients. I don't know what it is with this 8 clients thing. But they were, the clients were always right there. It's just my mind wasn't ready to do it. So yeah, it was a very turbulent time. And like I said at the beginning, when we were talking offline, like, you were a big part of that, because when I saw that there was a way to succeed, and I saw you as this picture of success that everyone looked up to in a company, if everyone was just mediocre, I don't know, I probably would have quit in 2 weeks. I may have never even stuck it out the distance had I didn't have an aspirational figure like you to even try to match or learn how you were doing what you were doing. So very grateful for that.
I appreciate that, Bill. And here's the deal. That story is fascinating. And what kind of revenue does your company do per year now?
$25.8 million we did last year.
I'm sorry, I gotta laugh, right? Because this is the story of people. Like, we have a lot of people that are listening here. So this is somebody who literally just took a risk, knew that it was going to be difficult, was scared, got over the fear, and now built something that is just $25.8 million a year is nothing to sniff about. So kudos to you. That's really, really impressive. Now, what do you think it is? I have to ask this. So we were talking prior to the podcast. We have like 5 friends. I can name some of them, but Tom Ailing, Gisual's CEO, Matt Sterling and Brian Williams are president and vice president of My KPI. Jeff Lewis and I, obviously, president and vice president of Lauer Media. Bill Hauser, CEO of SMB Team. What is it that was our team? Right? That was literally one sales team at a big corporate America job, and we all said we're going to do our own thing. And when you add up the total revenue, it's significant, right?
Yeah.
And there was a time where we were just, peons meeting there in corporate America. Like, what is that? I want to hear it from somebody else. How does that happen?
So you've heard about the PayPal mafia, right?
Actually, I have not. So you have to
Okay.
teach me about it.
Yeah. So PayPal mafia is like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn. So collectively, the group of people who were in that PayPal mafia, the founders of PayPal, have generated tens of billions of dollars of revenue. All of them had very successful companies. most of them multiple successful billion-dollar plus companies in a row. And I think in the book, Think and Grow Rich, they talk about the mastermind principle. And the mastermind principle, I think, is one of the strongest principles in human development. We really are social creatures. And if our reference point is that of, like I said, mediocrity, you become who you surround yourself with. And I actually think you were the one who set the bar. I came in as the, like you said, the new recruit, right? You were the one who had actually set the bar, which created a reciprocity. Whenever you're in a true mastermind relationship with someone, it's a reciprocity relationship. You set the bar on something, and I look at that as motivation and opportunity to learn and improve. And I maybe set a bar somewhere that may be slightly higher somewhere. And then you see that, and then you go, wow, maybe there's something else I can learn. And then you set it higher. And then I set it higher. And then ultimately it creates a growth, almost organism separate from you, where it creates this addiction to growth, this momentum that almost like an engine between those people in the quote mastermind. And I think we could have amped it up so much more, dude. Had knowing what I know now, you and I should have spent so much more time together. Like when we were grinding in YP, it would have tripled our results, right? But we were just in our own little habit grooves, right? And I think people need to value higher, myself included. I mean, we all get into ruts, no matter where we're at, right? And it comes down to the uncomfortable feeling of expanding your network. And it's not comfortable. Like I have, because of the benefits I've learning from role models, I always make it a goal every single month to reach out to someone that scares me. And recently I reached out to someone whose agency does $280 million a year in revenue. And he this is not recent, this is about 18 months ago. And we've gotten lunch almost every single month for 18 months, going on 2 years. And it's just because I had the balls to ask him to meet with me, right?
Right.
When I started my talk show, a long time ago, well, not long time, everything feels like a long time with how fast we are here. But a couple years ago, I ran this really big legal industry talk show called Law's Business Mastermind. And my second week of doing the show, I reached out to Jordan Belfort, right? Wolf of Wall Street. And he responded, and I interviewed him the next week.
That's amazing.
It was crazy, right? And then that led to all these people that we now have interviewed: Magic Johnson, Alex Rodriguez, Jillian Michaels, Gary Vaynerchuk twice I've interviewed, James Clear, author of Atomic Habits. The list goes on and on and on. It all started from one uncomfortable reach out, and that snowball effect that continues from that mastermind concept, because I'm always putting myself out of my comfort zone. I always want to be the dumbest person in the room. And the day that I'm the smartest person in the room, it's going to be a bad day, because that means I stopped learning.
And that's a theme here. If you listen to some of our previous podcasts, I preached that, now we preach that. That's something that we really, really need to take home from this podcast. So, Bill, can you talk to the audience about what setting like a really big, audacious goal looks like? You're the best at this that I've been around. Like you set these audacious goals, and then you actually believe in them. Like I see people who say, "Oh, I want to do this," and then they don't believe in them. You set really big, audacious goals, and you go out and chase them. Like, tell us what is that inside of you? Where does that come from?
Yeah. So, okay. So setting a goal is a cognitive process. Okay. in my mind, anyone can set a goal. Setting a goal technically is anyone can do this. You can pick up a pen and you can write down whatever your goal is, right? Anyone can do that. It requires writing ability. So I don't think that there is necessarily a need for people to get good at setting goals. I do think that's important. A lot of people don't set big enough goals, but I actually think it's everything around the goal that makes the goal come true. So the first thing is, do you have the identity that matches the goal? So there has to be some form of an identity match where the goal is truly an extension of your identity, of your future picture of yourself, right? So be your future self now. Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote that book, and it really comes into the concept of self-concept, right? If I see myself as the CEO of a 100-person company, then I would not have a 100-person company right now. Like, you don't get where, like, you don't get what you see yourself as. You I see myself as the leader of 1,000+ people. So my self-concept and my vision is such that I have to set big goals in order to not be a fraud to myself. Otherwise, I'm letting down my family. So like, I'm letting down my daughter, I'm letting down my wife, I'm letting down my mom, my dad. That's the level of like self-talk that I need to have in order to want to go out there and continually grow and adapt. So self-concept's really important. Vision is really important. And auto-suggestion is probably the most important, right? So like writing down a goal is very different than doing that for 12 months every single day and not missing a day. Writing down a goal versus doing it for 12 months straight and reciting it out loud to yourself every single day for 12 months straight. Completely different. Every time I drive to and from my office, speaking out my affirmations every single day in the present tense with complete conviction. Like, all these things add up because I don't have a reference point to success. Like, my family went bankrupt. Like, I don't have anyone in my family that I can bank or base this on. So it has to come from me. So auto-suggestion, vision, and self-concept, I think are what I would label as more important than goal setting. And then I think the other thing is massive action. So like, what is massive action? So if you don't take actions in alignment with your goal, then you're being a fraud, is how I look at it. So like, what I try to do is I try to force myself into very difficult situations, right? So like recently we had to rebuild our sales team. So I went out and poached a 10-person or 8-person sales team. So I went from identifying the problem and then in 1.5 months, bringing on 10 new people or 8 new people on my sales team, right? And so it's one thing, like if I were to just set a goal, like I kind of want our sales team to improve, you know, like we'll see what happens, you know, I want a sales team does X in revenue, sales team does X. Yeah, that's great, okay? But taking an action like that creates commitment consistency bias. So it forces your brain into the actions necessary to make that goal real because I took such a big leap. Like when I did my first virtual event, I did my first in-person event. We were behind on ticket sales and we had to fill a room of like 300 people and it scared the crap out of us. So, you know, I had already interviewed Gary Vee once, and in a matter of, call it like 7 minutes, let's say, I had decided to bring on Gary Vee as a speaker, Alex Rodriguez, the baseball player, and then someone else, which was literally combined speaker fees of like I don't know, $280,000, right? For this event that we were holding.
Right.
So it's one thing to say, I have an event with X number of people that does this, right? And then I'm just going to ball on a budget. Versus the opposite approach is, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't care if I have to go broke doing it, if I have to sleep under a bridge, it doesn't matter to me. We're going here. And the actions have to align with the goal. So I actually think big thinking becomes infectious when you're constantly taking big actions.
Right.
That's the simplest way I can put it.
No, and that's a wonderful answer. And I think our listeners are really going to kind of understand what it takes to build a $28 million or $25 million business in 5 years is exactly what you're talking about. So that was a really fascinating, look behind the scenes and how you kind of accomplish these great goals. Now, I have one more question for you. And, you had mentioned Worry 180, and I know you recently wrote another book, Law Firm Growth Accelerator, which we could talk about a little bit too. But those folks out there dealing with anxiety, what do you have to say to them?
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about anxiety is, first of all, it's one of the top 3 things I'm most grateful for in my life. Very grateful for having anxiety disorder. I'm very grateful for having hypomania, because without them, I wouldn't have the open-mindedness that I have today. I'm grateful to have overcome my anxiety disorder, and hypomania is something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life, and I'm pumped about that. Because hypomania is basically free bonus brain juice. I mean, that's cheat code right there. So
Not to interrupt you, I love your perspective, dude. And my health background and some of the things I've had to deal with. But somebody just asked me on a different podcast, they're like, how are you okay to talk about this? Why are you so vulnerable? And it made me smile here. For those of you not watching on camera, I mean, you just owned it, and it's amazing. So anyway, I interrupted you, but please go ahead, finish your thought.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And it is rare. When I first started opening up about this, I had someone at a family dinner say, "Hey, Bill, if you're going into business for yourself, don't you think you're being a little too vulnerable? Don't you think that that's going to make you weak and people aren't going to become customers of yours if you are open about this?" And that actually ended up being the exact opposite. It was one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever gotten in my life, was to not be vulnerable. And I'm open about it with my team. I'm open about it with everyone I possibly can, because when you truly transcend something, you have to share the gift to others. So anxiety, in my mind, is the mind eating at itself, right? So when I was at the peak of my anxiety, like, it was so irrational that I would walk down the sidewalk and I would think people were going to pull guns on me. If I was eating in a cafeteria, I would think that people were staring at me and going to laugh at me for how I was eating, like just irrational thoughts. And that's where anxiety really becomes really bad, when you have irrational thoughts that have no measurement or reality in the current circumstance that you're in. So as soon as I was able to separate myself from my thoughts, and I was able to see my thoughts for what they were, which were irrational, and I was able to learn mindfulness and meditation and be able to not be affected by my thoughts and know, oh man, this is so cool, that I can't believe the human brain is so powerful that it's protecting me. It's giving me these extra fear-based thoughts to protect me. And I wouldn't be alive today if my ancestors didn't have anxiety. Like, if you go back to the Ice Age 10,000 years ago, like, all of the cavemen who didn't have anxiety died, right?
Right.
Because they weren't looking around corners. They weren't worried about, well, if I just don't get an extra next meal, maybe I'll be able to support my family. Like, they had multi-layered worry. They were able to look around corners and pre-project their resources better than the cavemen who died, right? And that ended up becoming Homo sapien. Homo sapien is really the amalgamation, all of the humans that didn't die off because they were able to be resilient. So when you're talking about turning adversity into strength and into your superpower, that's literally what created today's human genome. Like if you look at the United States is built of, it's an immigrant nation. And in order to be an immigrant, you had to leave your home, you had to cross a ocean, and you had to come to an undiscovered land. So we are literally, the United States is filled with what most would call crazy people. And it's not a problem. It's actually why we're the most economically viable nation in the world. It's because we have more energy than other nations. In nations that are surveyed like Japan, when they ask, is it respectful to start your own business? In Japan, most people say no. 3 out of 100 people say, yes, it's respectable to start your own business. What do you think that looks like in the United States? 98% of people in the United States say it's respectable to start a business because we're all maniacs. We're all higher on the risk scale because of the immigrant nation that we're in. So I actually think as soon as I started relabeling these ailments as my reason for success, right? Embracing my anxiety as my ability to be mindful. I've meditated every day for, I don't even know, 11 years now. I'm able to see my thoughts. I'm able to scan my body, see my emotions, and I don't try and change my thoughts. I just let go of them. And I've found that the body is such an amazing cleansing mechanism. When your body sees an irrational thought, it will allow that thought to dissipate over time, right? And it's not about changing the thought. It's just about staring it down, not being affected by the thought. And with hypomania, like it's the same thing. Like hypomania is on the bipolar spectrum, right? So when I first was diagnosed with hypomania by a psychologist, I thought, oh, that must mean I'm on the bipolar spectrum. There's a problem with me, right? And then I read the book, The Hypomanic Edge, and it taught me that welcome to the club. Like most successful people and entrepreneurs, actually 100%, there's almost no study ever that has gotten 100%. 100% of entrepreneurs that they surveyed in this study, they went through a list of all the criterion of hypomania, and 100% of entrepreneurs surveyed had hypomania from their answers to this test. That means you got a little bit more dopamine. No, if there's 32 million businesses in the United States and you think you can go out there and create the 32 million in one business, of course you're a little crazy. Like, welcome to the club. That is so freaking awesome. So thank you, God. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Without all of these blessings you've given me, I wouldn't be here today. So that's how I look at it.
That's amazing. And I think that's a great way to wrap this up. If you can't tell Bill's passion that comes through, or why he's such a great leader and why he's been able to build such an awesome business, it's one, he's super authentic, right? He's not hiding his he called them ailments, but his superpowers, right? He's literally owning them. And I think that creates trust, and in trust creates teams that can know that he's just going to be real with them. You know, I think that's the biggest thing is when we're real with people, they're going to go and they're going to say, all right, there's nothing being hidden here. So I'm going to give it my all every day and let's go accomplish these goals. So Bill, again, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to share your story, with our audience, and let's keep at it. We're on this journey, and I can't wait to see where we're at 5 years from now.
It's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. I really appreciate the opportunity, my man. Great catching up with you.